Dear Arcane Studios, what the fuck? Why did nobody tell me that Dishonored was fucking awesome? I've been sitting here pissing and moaning for the past 15 fucking years about how nothing has even remotely come close to continuing the beautiful legacy of Thief, certainly not Thief, and yet here you've been gathering dust all over your Victorian-era electro-punk self since 2012, and I just picked you up out of curiosity last week, and how do I feel about you? I fucking love you. Sneaksy, sneaksy, magicy, magicy, stabby, stabby, praise the sun! So after playing through the game 3 times in a row to make it feel like it's as long as it was supposed to be, I then realized, I think there's a secret villain in this game that nobody's discovered before, and I think I can use science to find this villain, and I did! And guess what? The science is God damn terrifying! If we're gonna have any chance of unmasking the elusive, actual villain of the first Dishonored game, we're gonna have to wear a number of hats this week, including our recently acquired epidemiology hats and the oft-forgotten and underestimated historian hats, because today we're gonna be taking a cold, hard look at something that skeeves me the fuck out more than anything else on the planet: disease. The first Dishonored game takes place within the confines of the fictional city of Dunwall and puts you in the shoes of Corvo Autono, the swarthy sex machine who's charged with protecting the Empress, whom he's not totally fucking, and he does a rubbish job at this. She gets shanked, and he spends the rest of the game avenging her death by running across rooftops and murder-stabbing his way through the list of folk responsible for plotting her murder. Dunwall is having a bit of a bad time because aside from their universally adored Empress who totally wasn't boning her bodyguard getting stabbed in the gut, the city is currently in the fight for its life against the all-consuming rat plague. Aside from killing literal truckloads of people every day, the rat plague also apparently turns some people affected by it into weird, delusional pseudo-zombies before they die. These pseudo-zombies spend their days jerking off, vomiting everywhere, and bum-rushing anybody they see that isn't currently infected with the plague. What the fuck, guys? This is the exact opposite way the CDC says you're supposed to act when you're sick. Cover your mouth, stay home, wash your goddamn hands! Corvo alone has the power to turn the tide of the disease one way or another, because of course he does, because we still believe the myth that one man armed with nothing but a sword and a gun has the power to completely alter the course of history that depends upon the actions of thousands of people. Where have I seen that before? But I'm in danger of getting off track. The world of Dishonored, while clearly based on Victorian England with inspirations from France and Russia, isn't our own world. It's close, but last time I checked, we never seriously used whale oil to jumpstart our industrial revolution, and we don't have mystical emo gods who grant people hot topic tattoos to go with their supernatural powers. That being said, there's an assload of things Dishonored takes from our own world, and when we wrestle to unpack them, maybe, just maybe, we can understand and appreciate a little more the advances that have made our modern life easier. Firearms, steam engines, bars, and sewers are a big deal, but nothing through the broad strokes of history has had a bigger long-term effect on humanity than disease. Interestingly, epidemics and pandemics are a relatively new thing in the history of humanity. People did get sick, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't until we started to congregate in cities, a practice that was made possible only by the advent of agriculture, that you really started to see diseases and epidemics tear through and ravage huge populations of people. Combine close proximity with one another and a less than scientific understanding of personal hygiene and sanitation, and you've got yourself a veritable breeding ground for death and horror. Thankfully, through the tireless efforts of scientists like Max Joseph von Pettenkofer, who went so far as to consume cholera himself to convince his contemporaries that hand washing could actually reduce the spread of disease, we've made leaps and bounds in the modern world and made many diseases that once posed serious risks to humans all but disappear. And in rare cases like smallpox, we've actually completely eradicated diseases with the life-saving magic of vaccines. Diseases are no joke. In 1918, the H1N1 strain of influenza killed over 50 million people worldwide. That's more people than have died from HIV ever, which has killed over 30 million people. Cholera, dysentery, scarlet fever, and smallpox. Few things have inspired and crippled entire nations like these diseases throughout history. But one disease stands out among them all. A disease so terrifying that it got the most metal name in all of history. The Black Death. The Black Death, aka the Plague, was responsible for some of the most horrific body counts in all of history. There have been many outbreaks of this virulent piece of shit throughout history, and at one point it killed a reported 200 million people throughout all of Europe in less than 10 fucking years. And this is where we get off our train of reality and hop right back onto the world of Dishonored. The rat plague is clearly inspired, if not a direct copy of the plague in our real world. The first clue is directly in the name: rats. You see, long before the actual cause of the plague was discovered, rats were historically associated with the disease. In fact, preceding almost every single major outbreak of the plague, there was a spike in the rat population, followed by rats dying by the hundreds and thousands. Shortly after these dead rats started showing up all over the place, people got sick. This is just as much the case in our world as it is in Dishonored's, where you literally find fucking rats everywhere. Couple this with the painted red marks to designate the plague that resemble the crosses people put on the homes of the folk who had the plague in real life, with the black necrotic gangrenous marks that cover victims' skin, as well as other symptoms, and we're talking about some textbook as fuck plague. So, what the fuck causes the plague? Rats. Well, sort of rats. Actually, we've drilled down the source of the plague pretty damned well. I present to you Yersinia pestis, one of the meanest pieces of shit bacteria on the planet. Resistant to vaccines and growing resistant to antibiotics, this monster doesn't know when to quit, and it's been terrorizing humanity almost as long as we've existed. Is there hope against this unstoppable beast? Actually, yes, a ton, actually, but we'll get to that. How does the plague in our real world work, and what does it teach us about Dishonored? How can we use this knowledge to unmask the identity of the supervillain that Arcane Studios oh so very much wants to keep hidden from us? And what the fuck do rats of all things have to do with it? I mean, rats generally don't like hanging out with humans all that much, certainly not enough to give them diseases easily. There must be some sort of missing piece of this equation that connects humans, rats, and the plague. But what could it be? Something small, something seemingly innocuous, something so insignificant that you'd never expect it to be capable of obliterating entire cities, and yet here it is. The flea. That's right, fleas are the ultimate vector that spreads the plague from rats to humans, and here's how it works. Fleas generally aren't that fond of humans. They're not the tasty blood meal they want most of all, and we don't have a lot of hair to hide in. But unfortunately, fleas don't have the luxury of being picky. When a rat infected with the plague dies, all the fleas on the rat are left without anything to eat. Worst of all, rats tend to die all at once together, so these fleas can't even hope to jump to another rat host for food. Thankfully, there's another option. People. Humans and rats tend to live very close to one another because humans are a reliable source of food and shelter, and when there are no rats to feed on, humans become the reliable source of food for fleas carrying Yersinia pestis. Fleas carrying the plague jump on humans, bite them, and kaboom! You've got the bubonic plague now, son. The fleas eventually die from the plague itself, which eventually clogs the digestive system of these pests, but it doesn't matter. The plague has now been spread to humans. So, do you want the good news or the bad news? The bad news is, untreated in an age without antibiotics, the real-life equivalent of the rat plague has a mortality rate of over 60%. The good news? Bubonic plague isn't really that contagious. You have to have blood-to-blood contact with someone who has the bubonic plague in order to catch it, so your friends and family just get to watch you die a horrendous, painful death, but you can die knowing that as long as you keep the house rat rat-free, they might live to see another day. But here's a question for you. How does a disease that spreads only by rats destroy almost half of the population of a city of thousands in just 2 years? That's what happened in Dunwall, and this is exactly the thing that happened in our real world. I mean, sure, there are a lot of fleas on every rat, but to be entirely honest, this is not the best medium for spreading a plague among a population. On top of it, we still have rats now, and we still have fleas, and yet only 15 people in the United States got the plague last year. And most epidemics and pandemics are diseases that spread from human to human. There must be something we're missing that will help us wrap our heads around this terrible disease and explain once and for all how the plague spread in our real world, which ultimately will help us understand Dunwall just a little bit better and hopefully unmask the identity of the real supervillain. So I built an epidemic model because fuck yes, I'm addicted to these things now, and using this and real world data, we can finally figure out what the fuck is going on. Let's look at the rats first. The plague in Dunwall was originally started when the spy master of the city imported rats with the disease and integrated them with the local population in order to eradicate the poor, because there's no tactic that works better to eliminate poverty in your city than by committing biological warfare against your own people. That will never backfire. Anyway, starting with a mere 100 infected rats, this disease spreads like wildfire as rats mingle, fuck, and die left and right, and in just a month, over 7,000 rats would be infected with the plague. And it's around this point that things start to get really terrible, for the rats at least, and it's when you'd first start seeing signs that things are gonna get really bad for humans too. In another month, you have over 200,000 infected rats running around because rats don't know about quarantining or washing their hands. The good news is that things are just about at peak awful for the rats right now, and in a few days, most of the rats that are gonna be infected will be infected, and not long after, those that are gonna die will be dead. Unfortunately, it's right around now that things start to get terrible for humans. The first dozens of infected humans start to show up, and shit just gets terrible. I'll save the play-by-play, but in less than 2 years, an entire third of the population has died. Thankfully, at about this point, the epidemic has reached an equilibrium, even if left untreated. There are still people getting sick, but the rate of infection is much lower than before. There's something really strange that happens when you compare these numbers, however, especially the number of dead rats losing infected fleas with the number of people infected with the plague. If you look at the peaks among both of these, the plague among humans reaches a fever pitch at about day 500, but the number of rats losing fleas doesn't peak until 1,000 days into the crisis. What does this mean? It means that while the bubonic form of the rat plague initially spreads from rat to human, it must also be spread another way. How could this possibly be? Well, in 2 ways, and while I'd love to ask you if you'd rather have the good news or the bad news, today all of our news is bad. 1. The plague, while initially bubonic, meaning it affects the lymph nodes and causes terrible, painful swelling in your lymphatic system, can invade other areas of the body. It can infect your circulatory system, giving you septicemic plague, which can kill you before you've even started showing symptoms, or it can infect your lungs, causing pneumonic plague, which, unlike bubonic, is really easy to spread to others by coughing. But this doesn't really show up until later, and as shown in this graph, creates a second, noticeably smaller outbreak of the plague near the tail end of the bubonic strain. But if you can't spread the rat plague by coughing, and the rats aren't solely responsible, then what the fuck is happening? It's almost as if there's something else spreading the disease. Something or someone who's been working behind the scenes against the people of Dunwall. Nay, no! This sinister piece of shit has been responsible for not just fictional outbreaks of the plague, but is actively working against humans anywhere that have succumbed to this terrible onslaught against our nervous systems. Who is this evil bastard? Pediculus humanus corporis, aka the louse. Yep, you heard me, lice. Lice are little shits that love to hide in clothes. We typically think of them as living in hair, but the truth of the matter is that lice will hide just about fucking anywhere humans are. Beds, pillowcases, your shirt, these motherfuckers love to crawl over everything, jump down from their hiding places to feast on our flesh, and then skip on back up to wherever they're holed up. Thought the Spy Master was the main villain? Nope. That shitty admiral motherfucker? Nope. That creepy emo guy whose only friend is an evil old lady? Nope. It's these blood-sucking motherfuckers just hanging out in everybody's clothes because before goddamn washing machines were invented, people just wore the same pair of underwear for fucking months because gross. Dude, I didn't shower for 2 days this week and my dick smelled like sweet and sour chicken from Panda Express. I don't even want to know what these people smelled like. Kinda recontextualizes the Victorian-era romance novels. And then he unlaced his pantaloons, and a great miasma issued forth from underneath his moist leather. Blech. Thankfully, while lice are evil bastards, they're relatively easy to get rid of. You just have to wash the fuck out of your clothes and yourself, and that's it. To think Piero and that dude with the beard spent all that time devising a cure and all they needed all along was laundry detergent and a washing machine. Anyway, that's why we don't get the plague that much these days. Sanitation and technology. Washing machines have made it really fucking easy to keep our clothes clean and from being infested with garbage organisms like lice. So hopefully sometime soon, Dunwall learns this little trick and keeps a new plague from cropping up in another 20 to 30 years. Also, be sure to dump every body you can in the river. Wash up! Sincerely, Austin. P.S. Hey, do you want to know more about the Black Plague and its impacts on our real world that extend beyond the video game? Then you need to check out The Black Death, the history and legacy of the Middle Ages' most deadliest plague. Most deadliest? Okay. The history and legacy of the Middle Ages' deadliest plague. It's a really amazing, albeit short, overview of the effects of the plague on both Europe and the entire world, and if you're busy like me and have too much stuff to do, you can actually pick it up as an audiobook at Audible. Audible is one of the top places in the world to get audiobooks, and even cooler, you can actually get your first audiobook free when you sign up for a 30-day trial membership at audible.com/shoddy. Audible is one of my favorite ways to listen to classics that tend to put me to sleep too, like The Art of War and Thus Spoke Zarathustra. I'm much less likely to fall asleep while doing dishes listening to someone else read Nietzsche, whatever, than I am reading it by myself. You can pick up those books and like literally thousands more at audible.com/shoddy, so go there now. Also, Alex, the writer of our very own Psycho, is gonna be doing a charity stream for Extra Lives on November 19th. Check out the link in the description to find out more, yo! Also, a quick shout out to Catherine R. Dean, whose master's thesis on modeling plague transmission in European cities served as a huge basis for a lot of my work this week. Thank you for doing the hard work for me, Catherine, and good luck on your PhD.